Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. Quick reminder, check out my affiliates. You got everything from Escape the Technocracy. They offer great resources, courses on escaping the technocracy. Wise Wolf Gold for precious metals if you're in the US. And the Black Friday sale stuff, Above Phone. If you purchase through me, I get a commission, you get a discount, and a Start Mail as well. I'm now an affiliate. I've been using them for a decade. I do like them. So you get a good deal if you go through me to get a Start Mail. You can even just try it out for a year. I think they give you a big discount for the first year. Easy DNS, of course, that's Mark Yeftovich's service he offers out of Canada. Passvault and Societatis Civis, they just renewed with me for another year. They offer apps to help you get second citizenship. If you're from Croatia, Poland, Italy, Argentina, I forget the other countries that they offer. Anyways, joining us for the first time is Michael Ginsburg of actionabletruth.media and actionabletruth.substack.com. Good day, mate.
Good day, boy. How are you?
I'm doing good. I believe you're down under, and it's funny because I found you via the Substack network notes and all that, and we've been sort of chatting back and forth in the comment section on Substack. I was just watching your interview with the famous actress Nicola Charles, I think her name is, the White Rabbit, and for a short time she was my colleague over at TNT Radio. And I really like the stuff that you're doing, and you're now making a new website. So you got your Substack, and you've just done Actionable Truth.media. So if you want to just tell us whatever you want to tell us about yourself, your work, your dissident views.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, boy. It's a great honor. So yeah, I guess a little bit about me. I think you kind of known online as the international man or something like that, just because of your background. So my background is kind of similar. So I was born in what is now Belarus. Back then was the Soviet Union. Then we moved to Israel when I was 4, and I moved to Australia in 2002. So I've been here almost 24 years now. So yeah, I've been kind of around. As far as my background, so my background is in technology. I worked in technology pretty much all my adult life. I was always, I guess to some extent, had a conspiratorial mindset, going back to obviously 9/11. That was the big one. I even remember watching some of Alex Jones documentaries, back in the early 2000s before I realized who and what he is, but it is what it is. So always had kind of a conspiratorial mindset, but I guess when I moved to Australia, and for a very, very long time, I always thought that this is a country that is very well run, right? The government does the right thing, they look after the people, it's not as corrupt as some other places. And 2020 was a big wake-up call for me and a big awakening moment when I realized what was happening here. And I mean, Australia was really at the forefront of the tyranny. I wrote, the first ever post that I published on Substack kind of goes in great detail through my awakening journey. There was a specific event and a specific thing that has happened, and that only happened in 2021, didn't even happen in 2020. So I was still kind of a normie until probably March 2021. But that was a defining moment. Then the Canadian Freedom Convoy was really that was my crossing the Rubicon moment. And that's when I realized, okay, something serious is going on. And then I kind of started researching. And I started, that's the time that I also started consuming a lot of independent media. Obviously I've stopped listening to mainstream completely. And there was a lot of content, and that content was helpful, but also in a way, the problem that I personally faced is, obviously the content itself is pretty depressing. It's not uplifting, and it is what it is. But a lot of these commentators, independent media, they kind of leave you hanging there. So okay, they'll say, well, look, basically we're all gonna die, we're all gonna be enslaved. See you next week. All right. So right, okay, all right, that's great. I consumed a lot of that stuff, a lot. And towards late 2022, it really started affecting me. I got really pretty depressed, I didn't know what to do. There was also the time of peak mandates in Australia. Like, I couldn't, go to a lot of places. And it was a wild thing. I guess also, because of my maybe Jewish background, I don't know, but seeing signs proof of vaccination required for entry, actually seeing signs like that in Australia in 2022, that really affected me pretty badly, right? So okay, I thought, okay, well, what do I actually need to feel better, right? And then I thought, okay, well, I need to do something with this knowledge, right? I need to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Okay, we know that. What are we going to do about it, right? And there was not a lot of that content that I could find, at least online at the time. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to do that, right? And that's why I kind of chose the name Actionable Truth, right? Because truth by itself is great, right? You know the information and you understand what's going on. But if that's where it ends and you don't take action on that, you actually end up being worse off. So that's kind of where my background and how I got to do what I'm doing. That's how it happened, basically.
That's fascinating. You mentioned the Jewish element, because I assume because of your last name, Ginsburg, you were Jewish. But I actually, if people can't see behind me, there it is. I'm pointing to it. That's an Annenpass from 1938 Nazi Germany that I bought off an Italian antique dealer for $10 on eBay, and that's to prove the purity of your, Aryan German bloodline. And then you've got the other pass, which is the Nazi health pass. And so I bought that during COVID. To your point, because they said it was anti-Semitic to compare Jews in Nazi Germany to Nazism to COVIDism. I mean, here we are, you yourself, Jew. And there's others, I forget her name, Vera Sharaf as well.
Yep.
Pointing out as Jews that this is exactly what it is. And
she's not just Jewish, she's an actual Holocaust survivor, for real, right? So she has a very different, a much longer historical perspective than I do. And I mean, history, the famous saying, history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. I mean, that's literally, we've seen that.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it now as well.
Yeah, and I had Edwin Black on, who talks about openly that stuff, the algorithm ghetto, eugenics, as he calls it, and then Pastor Arthur Pawlowski from Canada. And then you when you do the research, you realize it was the Anglo-American establishment. We're going on a side quest, but I just want to bring this up. The Anglo-American establishment that first did eugenics, as we all know, they, Rockefeller, Carnegie's, all those foundations advised Hitler on the eugenics policies, and then IBM created the first COVID pass, right? They created the first passport for the Germans. And then let's fast forward to COVID. IBM was helping create the COVID digital pass, and the Rockefeller Foundation was advising governments on COVID policies. So nothing has changed. But and one more point, because you mentioned from Belarus, I think you're my first Belarus guest. I just wonder if you had any opinion on Batka, good old Lukashenko.
Look, I mean, obviously I left when I was 4, and I'm definitely not up to date with internal Belarusian politics. We have no family there or anything like that. But I mean, obviously, the guy was he basically was president since independence. And I mean, the end game is pretty obvious there. I mean, it's Belarus and Russia are going to merge. That's a done deal. I mean, they are already for all sense and purposes, they're already one country, right? I mean, really, there's really no, other places like Ukraine, obviously the Baltic states, they have a history, right? They have their own culture, they have their own language, they have thing that goes back well before the Soviet Union, Tsarist Russia, all that sort of stuff. Belarus doesn't really, it has its own language, but nobody, even a lot of people who grew up in Belarus and still live there, I don't think they they speak that. And even when the president, I've seen him a couple of times online just speak, right? When he delivers speeches or even when he does interviews, he never speaks Belarusian. He speaks Russian, right? It's also interesting. Zelensky was also always speaking Russian to the media until the war started, right? And I'm fairly sure, that he's Russian. He's actually better than he's Ukrainian because he grew up on the Russian side of Ukraine. So anyway,
and maybe that's a good jumping off point, which deals with what we were talking about and what we're moving to. So Lukashenko was one of the few global leaders who admitted, I've shared that article. It's still in, if you go to my Telegram channel and type in Lukashenko, it'll pull up that article from 4 or 5 years ago where Lukashenko said the World Bank and IMF came to me offering money bribing me to lock the country down.
Yep.
And I said no, which was quite the reveal. And then there was an attempted coup on him, which failed. And then to jump off, as you said, a lot of people don't understand what's going on there, that there's this union state between, Belarus and Russia.
Mhm.
And you'd probably agree with me. I think virtually all governments have the same globalist ideology, and I think that's the genesis of the Belarusian Russian government is the genesis of the Eurasian Union that wants to be built. Because the EU is you have EU. They're talking about North American Union. There's an African Union, and so I kind of feel like that's the beginning of what they want to create as this Eurasian Union. So any thoughts on that, as well as just before getting into digital ID, your broad views on what is this whole new world order thing?
Yeah, look, I mean, just on your point, yeah, I do agree with you, Russia and Belarus, yeah, but I think the bigger player is Kazakhstan. So, I mean, Russia and Kazakhstan have been close for a very long time, and Kazakhstan actually is in Russia. So, Baikonur, where, the Russian space program is based at, is in Kazakhstan, right? It's a sovereign Russian territory, kind of like an enclave within Kazakhstan, right? So, I mean, the relation is very close, and I think Russia pays, very good money, rent for for that territory. So, I mean, the relations there are very, very close. The Eurasian Union, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's very, very simple. I mean, and I think you've even shared it, and I agree with you 100% on that. It's basically 1984, the book, right? The three, supranational states, unions that are kind of fighting each other, but not really. Nobody's trying to win. That's literally what it is. I mean, it's not rocket science. That's ultimately the end game. Well, the ultimate end game is one government. Right. But initially, you're going to have 3 or 4. So there's consolidation into supranational unions, like the EU is already in place, African Union, all that, or Eurasian stuff. And then it's one government. I mean, it's not rocket science. This is basic stuff. Anyone can see that. And I think even the other side, our enemy, they're openly talking about it, that this is where it's going, right? So, the UN is the global government and all that sort of stuff. One currency, there's always also these, idea of creating a one world religion. So the end game is very, I think, for people like us who kind of woken up during COVID or before COVID and understand what's going on, it's very, very simple. It's if you go even back to the 90s, right? So Bill Cooper, right? The legendary, conspiracy researcher. So he called it one world totalitarian socialist government. That's it. That's the end game. Very simple. And it is socialist. The focus is on socialist, which means private ownership will not be allowed. You will own nothing and be happy. Klaus Schwab didn't really invent anything, right? He's a spokesperson, right? He also didn't write any of his books. He's just a guy, he's just a guy, and he's a talking head. It's funny that they chose a guy like that with a heavy German accent. He looks and sounds like a Bond villain. It's almost like they're laughing in our faces, but that's what it is,
I think they are laughing in our faces. And H.G. Wells, you go back a century further, more than a century, H.G. Wells was talking about this. His specific phrase was democratic socialist world state, just as you say. But I think it's socialist for us, but not for them. My recent guest, Paula Jardine, mentioned that through their attempts to tokenize everything, commodify everything, humans, animals, the earth and nature, they're attempting to truly become the masters of the universe and own everything. So socialism for us, capitalism for them. And that, I guess,
but that's always like that. Even if you go, but that's how socialism works. If you look at the Soviet Union, if you look at CCP China right now,
Cuba.
The rulers, they don't live under socialism. Gorbachev, he didn't stand, he didn't line up for, in the food lines, to buy some chicken, for half it. It doesn't work like that. Same thing in Poland, same thing anywhere in, Eastern Europe. You're from Croatia. I'm sure, your own parents can tell you that. So, socialism by definition means that it is for the governed, not for those who govern. It's a dictatorship. That's the idea, right? Because someone has to pay for all of that stuff, and people pay with their toil and labor.
It's one big animal farm. And to move then to the big topic, and before I hit record, you told me this. I fully agree with you. I think a number of my recent past guests also that, what Edwin Black calls the algorithm ghetto, the social credit system, the algocracy, the digital gulag. This is the most important topic right now, because it's throwing the whole world into one giant concentration camp, 15-minute cities, Hunger Games, and this is it. This is the end game, because if they get this in, no other topic is interesting or important, because you literally, you're being put into a concentration camp. I mean, it's effectively it's death. And so, just your thoughts on digital ID and this whole technocracy end game.
So here's the thing, like the vision of what they were trying to do is very, very old. It's well over 100 years old. It's been communicated even as far as back as the 19th century. I mean, you mentioned H.G. Wells. H.G. Wells literally wrote a book called The New World Order. I mean, but here's the thing. Here's what they were lacking, right? I don't know how many there are of them. I don't know. Some people say 300, some 3,000, some 20,000. It doesn't matter. But there's, say, whatever, 20,000. And then there's billions of us. So there is a technological problem, like a tool set problem that they had, or they had at the time. They don't have it now, but they had for a long time, which is how can you control, as a small minority in numerical terms, how can you control billions of people? Like, we need tools for that. We didn't have the tools. Now we do, right? Hack the brain, Yuval Noah Harari, right? So now they actually have the tools to implement that, right? And a very, very important component, not the the most important component is the digital ID, right? Because in order to enable everything else, they need to have something that uniquely identifies you across everything that you do, what you buy, what you look at, where you go, where you travel, everything. So it's not just people think it's just in the digital world. No, it won't be just in the digital world. When you travel, like in the physical world, right? And even drive, and your license plate is scanned, right? It is still linked to your digital ID. So this is like the one ID to rule them all, right? And once they have that, right? It's done. It's over. You cannot, you cannot demonstrate against a computer. You cannot, reason with an AI and say, oh, look, I'll do better next time. Sorry about it. I've got a family to feed, so I had to do this. It doesn't care. There's no negotiating. There's no reasoning. It never sleeps. It never stops. It's like the Terminator, right? So that's what people need to understand, that we are now at that stage. So the technological infrastructure for that is not underdeveloped. It is here. It's ready. Now it's rolling out and scaling, right? What's happening in Australia, what's happening in many countries, really. Australia is at the forefront of that. But what's happening in Australia now, next will be in the UK. To a large extent, it is already in the US, but then it will happen in the US. So this is what we need to realize. This is not like the vaccine. This is not like the pandemic treaty. This is not the WHO, right? There's once this is in place, it is done, right? And I guess the thing that really, really frustrates me, and why I get really, really concerned, and I kind of start to get a bit depressed again, is everything that we have done so far hasn't worked. We haven't succeeded in stopping anything from the enemy's agenda. Anything. Not a single thing. I had a discussion with someone on Substack in comments. Oh, we pushed the globalist agenda by 5 years. Based on what? Why do you think that? That's nonsense. Right? No disrespect, but that's nonsense. So the thing is, here's the problem. We tried to, counter what they're doing within the tool set, right, that they have provided us, within that walled garden that they provided us. Voting, petitions, demonstrations, all that sort of stuff, right? And it's kind of to help people understand, it's like you are in a casino, right? And you're playing the slot machines, right? And obviously all the slot machines are connected to one computer. So it's it's all predetermined, right? And you're playing the slot machines. Oh, this one is no good. I keep losing money. I'll just go to the other slot machine. It is the definition of insanity. This is literally the definition of insanity. Now, look, if people want to engage in stuff that doesn't do anything and doesn't move the needle, go knock yourself out. To be honest, like, I'm live and let live. I don't really care. Like, I mean, if you feel good doing that, go for it. But the thing is that if we continue doing that as a collective, as a society, the implications are going to be dire for all of us, whether we understand that, like, that this is the wrong approach or not, right? And then what we're going to say, oh, well, like, whilst we're sitting inside, like, what you said, the algorithm ghetto, right? Or literally like a gulag, right? Like with like some AI, like, drones, like, patrolling so that we don't escape. Oh man, maybe that petitioning and demonstrations, maybe that was the wrong approach after all. Do you know what I mean?
Just on that point, I was watching one of the interviews you gave. I don't know, I forget which one, but you laughed at petitioning, and I've had that same view. And I noticed it's died down a bit amongst the resistance, where some years ago there was more of that. But anytime I get a colleague from abroad, one of my digital comrades sending a petition, I just laugh. I'm like, guys, like, you can sign the petitions to your heart's content, whether it's like change or whatever. What was the other one called? Something like Avast is the antivirus, but there's a one that starts with a or the UK, official government petitions. No, they don't care. They just ram right through. Like, it's completely useless. The petitions, and just another aspect, just to fully flesh out further the danger, as you mentioned, digital ID, the thought crime stuff. I mean, it's just like Orwell. I reread Orwell 1984 this summer and watched the movie for the first time. All these talk of hate speech. I just read today some British footballer got convicted by the British government for thought crime. He said something offensive online. You're not supposed to put people like in jail or fine them for that, but that's what hate speech is. So if you think a wrong thought, now you go to jail. And that combines with what you're saying with digital ID. So thought crime, the digital currency aspect, the geolocation aspect. And so it's going to be total concentration camp. So any further thought on that, as well as what are the things that might work?
So here's the thing. Yeah, I mean, 1984, I mean, that book makes for some like terrifying reading now. I mean, this is like bloody hell. I mean, even like, peace through strength. I mean, that's a Trump administration slogan now. I mean, it's insane. War is peace. I mean, we are living it.
The Nobel Peace Prize winner, she won the Nobel Peace Prize, and she says, we need war.
Invade Venezuela.
I'm like,
yep. So, I mean, this is where we are now, right? So I mean, you mentioned the UK petition, right? I mean, this is not change.org. This is on the UK Parliament website, and almost 3 million Brits signed it, right? It was heavily promoted, and then there was a rally, and then there was a protest. And basically, to all of these things, the UK government said, yeah, okay, cool. Peace off. Like, so okay. So like, what is this? So like, so some of the, we're going to do another demonstration. It's going to be even bigger. We're going to get 5 million signatures on the petition. Guys. So, okay. So what is a different approach? The underlying principle is that we cannot work within their walled garden and within their framework of available tools. We cannot, right? The only way to win is to not play their game, right? The only way to beat the casino is burn down the casino, right? Like literally in some cases, right? So here's what I'm saying, right? I mean, I used to say like, stop paying taxes and stuff like that. I don't think that by itself is sufficient anymore. But here's the thing. Ultimately, all their power and their ability to do what they do comes to the financial setup that they've created. Fractional reserve banking, fractional reserve lending, fiat currency, like, they can print out of thin air. Now, they know it's a scam. They've known it for a long time, which is why they're moving to like, the digital currency, like, stable coin, CBDCs, it's the same thing. It's just like, the difference is who issues them, right? But other than that, there's no difference. So they already know, okay, we're going to collapse that system and we're going to replace it with this, right? So that's the Great Taking, that book that is actually very, very good because it explains like exactly how it's going to happen. Because like, they literally at the stroke of a button, they can do that now, right? Because everything is digital. So here is the thing. And people can argue about that. And maybe like people have better ideas. And if they do, I would love to hear them. But here is the thing. We know what they're going to do. They're going to collapse the financial system. They're going to collapse the banking system and replace it with a CBDC when they are ready, right? What does that mean when they are ready? They need to have the digital ID infrastructure rolled out to a sufficient level before they can move to that. If that happens before, they have a bit of a problem. Like, they have to scrabble. They may still succeed and may still win. Like, I want people to, realize that, because they've been preparing it for a long time and the infrastructure for that is ready. The question is, to what extent is it's been rolled out already? So we are now in, I guess, a window of opportunity, other than the fact that, we need to use any and all means to ensure that nobody accepts digital ID, including the normies, including people who don't understand what's going on, including the people who had 10 boosters. Because if they take it, right, and they are, whatever, at least 50, 60% of the population, this will affect our outcome as well. But other than that, right, we need to collapse the financial system. Now, because the financial system, and look, there will be collateral damage, right? It's going to hurt, right? Anarchy may ensue, absolutely, right? I mean, if we were having this conversation 3 years ago, I said, look, maybe try less extreme things, because we don't know what's going to happen once they do that. But unfortunately, now at this point, we have to collapse the financial system before they collapse it on us. And they will do that when they are ready. Once the digital ID is ready and they're ready to turn on CBDCs or stable coins in the US or whatever, it doesn't really matter, they'll flip the switch. So before they flip the switch, that's our last chance and our last window of opportunity. Now, what happened, collapsing a fiat-based fractional reserve lending banking system is obviously very, very easy, right? Because it is all based on fraudulent lending, right? And even if 10% of the loans go bad, people default on them, banking system collapses. If 50%, I mean, that's financial Armageddon, right? And look, people ask me, okay, well, what happens then? I don't know, but at least, at least it's it's gonna hurt them. You're gonna, it's like taking, you have a tiger or a lion coming to you, and you grab a branch, with, lit branch, that is on fire, and you shove it in their face. You may get burned as a result of that as well. But that's gonna stop the lion. It's just, oh shit, he may run away completely, right? He may come back, keep coming back, but at least it will prevent the lion from eating you. That's what people need to understand. So the whole thing, the only way to stop that, right, is to collapse the banking system, because everything is built around that. So stop paying taxes. Now, that's not enough, unfortunately, right? Because in a fiat situation, the government can print. All right, we'll just print the revenue. It's all fraudulent anyway. We don't give a shit. But if all the banking system collapses, and as a result, the whole fiat system collapses, and we get 2008 multiplied by 100,000, that will at least, look, it may stop them, right? Until they figure out, okay, what are we going to do next? Because we don't have the digital ID. They may just instead go and say, okay, well, we're going to push it now. We've got it ready. Well, here's the CBDC now. We'll save you, right? Sign up for your digital ID and we get your money back. Right. So that's the other part that I'm saying, that, people need to be terrified out of it. They need to have an emotional reaction to the idea of getting a digital ID. Right. So this is what I'm thinking, but I mean, if you think you're going to vote your way out of that, or you're going to sign a freaking petition, or you're going to demonstrate and walk around with placards, and they're going to say, oh man, this is these people mean business. I better stop doing that. Then I'm sorry, you're living in La La Land. As I said before, I don't care if you want to live in La La Land, knock yourself out, but that will affect me. That will affect you. That will affect our families as well, because that will allow the enemy to advance their agenda.
Yeah, it became clear to me through COVID, and probably 3 times more than the average person, since I have 3 presidents to vote for. And when I realized it doesn't, no matter which country, we had, again, I cite the Mexican elections, where there were 3 political parties. They are all globalist, COVIDist, it doesn't matter which flavor you vote for. You're going to get exactly the same thing. And to your point, Aaron Day, who I met earlier this year and had him on the podcast, he says the same thing as you. I believe Aaron Day says we should try and pull your money out, put it into gold, silver, real assets.
It's not even that. No, it needs to be weaponized even further. Intentional default on loans. Intentional, right? Intentional. Now, there could be the implication, and I've put it in an article that I've written. It's called Regain Our Focus. We must regain our focus. People can have a look at it. But look, anything, if you stop paying your loans, anything that is a paper asset is very easy to take. Your home is a little bit more difficult because they physically need to come and foreclose, right? So if people can unite together and make sure that foreclosure, they can't they can't come in and change the locks, right? And also think about it, even in a country like Australia, right? 27 million, right? If 1 million people stop paying their mortgages, that's all. Like 1 million people out of 27, right? They cannot manage that. They will try and foreclose on some, but they can't do everything, right? They're going to foreclose on 1 million homes. They can't, right? And a huge country like Australia. So it is extreme. I know it is. People say, it's kind of like, it's kind of like financial terrorism, but this is where we are now, right? And if that's not going to stop their agenda, at least it's going to delay that. And I say again, look, if people have other ideas that they believe that will actually work, right? Not petitioning, not voting, not actually work, I'm all ears. But this is one thing that I personally think can work.
But it would have to see the problem there is, for legal reasons, do we have to say that, don't go out necessarily and default? But maybe someone listening goes out tomorrow and does it. But if you don't have a critical mass,
correct,
then that person who goes tomorrow and defaults, they're going to end up losing their home, right?
Correct. So. And that's why I said before that there needs to be, first of all, there needs to be awareness for that. And then there needs to be people, and that's ultimately what it is, right? People coming together to protect each other if the other side attempts to respond. And this is where we have a huge advantage. Massive advantage, and that's our numbers, right? We have our numbers. As I said, I gave you the example of Australia, right? 27 million, 1 million, that's enough. But what? This 1 million, they need to be in a situation where they will be able to support each other. Now, does that mean in practical terms that it has to be in a geographic proximity to each other? Potentially, yes, right? Potentially, yes. There's also other benefits in geographic proximity to each other, where you have a community of like-minded people, things around secession, things around declaring independence, things around blocking yourself off from a regime encroachment, physically blocking, right? That's why I have a problem with something like a network state or a distributed nation. It has no territory to defend. How do you defend each other? Yeah, you have a community of like-minded people, but how do you actually help each other? What? Send each other Bitcoin, right? It doesn't work. So I realize that what I'm saying may sound extreme, but this is unfortunately where we are. I would have spoken very, very differently if we were having this conversation in 2023, right? I would have had no idea probably if we were having that in early 2021. But look, this is the final game. And instead of thinking of practical ways, forget about what I said. People have other ideas. By all means, great, go for it. Suggest them and let's discuss that. Let's see what we can actually do. But instead of that, all of a sudden, right, everyone is at each other's throats over race, over religion, over migrant, not migrant, the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, guys. Oh, virus, no virus, or flat earth, not flat earth. Guys. Are you freaking insane? I watched this, and I said that to you before we started recording. I don't know if people remember, but when people went to the anti-mandate rallies, I know that was definitely the case in Australia. And you'd go there, and people of all walks of life would show up, right? White people, black people, brown people, yellow people. Nobody gave a shit. I know I didn't, right? Nobody gave a shit, right? Everyone was there, right? Because they were fighting for their freedom. right? They were fighting for their bodily autonomy. And all of a sudden, as if at a press of a button, and I think it was at a press of a button, and it was started on Twitter almost certainly, like I can like pinpoint even the exact point where it started, right? All these like, Jew, Muslim, like all this, like it has become insane. And I mean, obviously, you had Russia, Ukraine that kind of like, started this thing, right? And then obviously October 7th came. And then, I mean, I remember saying to someone, when October 7 happened, on the day that October 7 happened, I said, okay, all right, I see what's going on here. The Russia-Ukraine stuff didn't do the job. It just didn't do the job. People kind of tuned out. Yeah, all right, we don't give a shit, right? We don't care, not about Russia and not about Ukraine. So I said, okay, we need to go for a sure thing. No more mucking around. We need to go for a sure thing. Enter October 7th. That is the sure thing, right? And then it became a religious thing and a racial thing and this and that. And look, and I just, guys, it's like, it's like the enemy is like right here. That this is defense. They're not at the fence. They're climbing over the fence. You can see their faces and they're pointing a gun at you and you're arguing to the guy next to you and say, oh, no, you Jew. No, you Muslim. My religion is better. My race is better. I build better, nicer buildings. And the guy is with the gun pointing at you right now. So it is like people need to get their shit together. Like, in what we need to talk about, okay, you think my suggestion is extreme? That's fine. What are the alternatives? But like, instead people are going to say, oh, you're a Jew. You're like, you're that, you're trying to do this, you're trying to do that. You're part of the global conspiracy. Well, I had a conversation like just recently. I got a comment like, someone had a go at like, Tommy Robinson works for the Jews, right? And I said, well, I'm a Jew. He doesn't work for me, right? And then I got a reply, oh, we pray that, you convert and acknowledge like, the one true God, Jesus Christ, right? That's the comment I got. And this is an intelligent person, right? I mean, this is a person that does good work. I'm not going to name them, but I mean, come on, guys. Like, seriously, you understand, like, you're a person who understands what's going on. If you were like some bot or some retard on Twitter, yeah, that's fine. But I mean, come on.
Michael,
right? So we need to recalibrate and we need to understand the gravity of our situation and we need to get our shit together. That's my message.
I do think you do need to convert to Jesus, Michael. But but my point there is with what you and I do think Tommy Robinson probably works for the Israeli state, but I don't even like in my weekly news.
Tommy Robinson is a character. His name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, right?
Right, and for me, it's
literally
like,
a character.
Right
now, that character was created as far back as 2009. Like, I mean, there's articles and investigations. Like, it's literally a made-up character.
Right, and my point is on when I share stuff on my socials, I don't even mention Tommy Robinson. To your exact point, like he's irrelevant. He's not important. What's important is what we're talking about. Like, why waste my time talking about Tommy Robinson and then, as you said earlier, the no virus stuff or the Earth is flat. Like, there are people. I'm talking about another subject, and they'll leave comments, and like understanding that the Earth is flat is the solution to all the problems, or that realizing that there are no viruses is going to save us all. I'm like, what?
And I usually respond to people like that and say, okay, you know what? That's fine. Let's assume that you're right? And the issue of whether viruses exist or not, or whether the Earth is flat or not, is the key to everything. Let's assume you're right, 100% correct. Okay, explain to me, like I'm five, like in simple terms, if every single person on the planet, without a shadow of a doubt, knows that there are no viruses or the Earth is flat, how is that going to help us stop digital ID?
No, I mean, it's
to your point, right?
And I never like the way you explained the whole thing with October 7th. I've never heard it so crystallized as you did, and I think there's something to that point, because the whole Israel-Palestine thing, and again, it becomes from either side, even from alt media. I'm in the middle because I'm a Christian. I'm not a Zionist. I don't give free rein to Israel. I'm not necessarily for a Palestinian state. I recognize the bad. They're destroying homes. You can't destroy people's homes and kick them out. And so I'm kind of like in the middle. And then even the alt media says you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. It's like, well, George Bush said the same.
That's a George Bush saying.
It's like,
and that's literally like, on the day of October 7, the IDF official account, like the official account, posted literally this. That's what they posted, right? And that brings me to another point that I think is very worth mentioning. So everyone seems to be stuck in this duality thing, right? What do I mean by that? Okay, if this side is bad, it means by definition that the other side are the good guys, right? So if the Israelis are bad, Hamas are the good guys, right? Or even like in Syria, right? If al-Jolani is the bad guy, then Assad was a good guy, right? I mean, it doesn't work like that.
No, those are great points. We bring it up with the multipolaristas, as I call them, who think Xi Jinping and Putin are going to save us, when it's like, it's all bad guys. I mean, I even use the example, with Assad. I mean, you talk to people or you go, Saddam Hussein. I had a girlfriend who was from Baghdad way back in the day, and I had a professor later who was Saddam Hussein's defense lawyer, Curtis Dobler, Dutch-American international human rights lawyer. And it's like both can be true at the same time. Like Assad, in some ways, maybe for the sovereignty of his country, he was good, but I'm guessing he led a authoritarian light regime. Okay, yeah, he kept the three different religious groups together, but it wasn't an ideal situation. But you don't want either regime change and bringing in Jelani or here in the case of Mexico, they always put us between a rock and a hard place. I repeat that often.
You have to choose a side, right? Yeah. Okay, you have to. Okay, so like you say, okay, well, you say I'm like if you say I'm an anti-Zionist and I oppose what Israel is doing in Gaza, so do you condemn Hamas? Well, what does that have to do with that? If I say that doesn't mean that Hamas are the good guys, and I often say that, and I say, look, guys, Hamas also, they're not the good guys here. It's like, oh no, you say that because you're a Jew, you're a Zionist shield, you understand what I'm saying? So we reached a point where we can't even have like a rational discussion about anything, right? And look, that's pretty bad, but it's multiplied 1,000 times when, as I said, there's like a guy on the fence pointing a gun at you, right? And you're arguing with the guy next to you who's supposed to help you fight against that guy. So it's like, the defense team, right? Even in a football match, like, the guy's coming, right? And they're arguing with each other. Oh, I don't like your shoes. Oh, you're black. Oh, you're white. Guys, like we need to stop this nonsense. We really need to stop this nonsense. Like, if we don't stop this nonsense, it is worse than death. There is actually things that are worse than death, right? There is an existence that is worse than death. So people need to understand enough with this nonsense. I mean, to your point about like, the China, I mean, I don't know what happened, but it seems to me, I don't know. I mean, you probably spend more time on Twitter than I do, but it seems like, someone literally pressed a button and Twitter is full of like CCP propaganda. How advanced China is, how safe China is. And look, I mean, they are miles ahead of us. And China is not a dictatorship. There is no social credit score. It's a conspiracy theory. Don't believe the anti-China propaganda. Oh, okay. So China are the good guys now, right? The people that like Schwab and Trudeau in Canada said that they're the model. Oh, they're the good guys now. Okay, well, we're gonna have clean streets, but we're all gonna be in a gulag. But hey, the Soviet Union also had pretty clean streets. I can tell you, they were pretty clean. There were no homeless people in the Soviet Union, right?
I've been calling that out for a long time, and I call them multipolaristas. I don't know what else to call them, and I've been. So on some of their channels, there was I won't name names, but there was a guy who had me on a live, let's say, call, and as soon as I started, so first of all, I've seen that a lot of their accounts on whatever platform, as you said, like a button was pushed, they came out of nowhere, and they just had hundreds of thousands of followers. That's what's going on there, and then they toe a specific line. And they never change. It's BRICS is the best. And they say, when I started to criticize BRICS, the guy was like, he started talking over me. And I'm like, and everyone can hear me.
Oh, you're an imperialist. You're
No,
an
no, 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 no.
imperialist.
So my mic was working fine, and he starts talking over me, saying, "Oh, well, I can't hear you. Your mic isn't working." Meanwhile, everyone else, because it was like a X space, everyone else could hear me fine. But it's because as soon as I started criticizing BRICS, that kind of tells you it's almost like they're getting paid to propagandize, but they have to shut down anyone who's countering that propaganda. And even some of these I'm happy still to talk to these people on geopolitical issues, but I had one multipolarista who I've had on in the past who said, I don't do podcasts anymore, really. And so very often I won't come back on. And then I see that person, the next week on other multipolarista podcasts. So it's like a circle jerk. So they're just, repeating the same, and they never talk about globalism. They never talk about digital ID. They never talk about technocracy. So
exactly, and they will also take the stance, especially if they're Christian, they'll take, oh, this is like the satanic West versus Russia is like pro-Christian. They defend the Christians, they defend family values, they do all this, they do all that. And I always it's actually one of my recommended Substacks, but Edward Subscott, right? Riley Wagaman. Guys, the guy lives there.
Well, he just got kicked out. You saw that, right?
Yeah, I know. But one of the things that he did is when they had the Kazan BRICS conference last year, and he actually he published the Kazan Declaration. Read for yourself. Same thing, digital ID. The who is the best thing since sliced bread. Guys, what the fuck? Putin is the good guy all of a sudden, right? This is nonsensical. And look, the same thing is happening in the US now, right? Kamala and Biden, they were the worst. And now, Trump came back. He'll save America, right? The guy from, Operation Warp Speed. And you look at these people, and, a lot of them are highly intelligent. They were very vocal during the mandates. They understood what's going on. They warned people against the shorts. They did this, they did that. But now Trump is the good guy. Even with Alex Jones is an extreme example, but right? Tucker Carlson, that's probably another extreme example. But guys, come on, right? So this is and to your point, multipolar world. Yes, multipolar world is the enemy's agenda. Literally number 2 in that 2016 or number 3, the third bullet point in that WF video, 10 predictions for 2030. The United States will no longer be the dominant power. Several countries will dominate. This is from they're telling you this is what they want. This is what they're working on, and now it's happening. So you think it's a good thing?
It goes way. I was I was reading some book or somebody's I forget the source now, but the first time multipolar was mentioned was way back in the earlier 20th century in some globalist white paper, I don't know, quantum foreign relations or something. So, and I would often say BRICS was coined by a World Economic Forum young global leaders, so multipolar world. And I saw in one of your articles recently, you shared a lot of stuff from Miles Harris, who I just had on the podcast last week. And he mentioned it in our conversation, but he just dropped a really good video explaining how they're making a Hunger Games district world where you're going to have the 5 multipolar zones. And I think I was explaining to this, talking about this in our off the record supporters call this afternoon, where it's they make us interconnected so we can't escape. So you have Asia as the manufacturing hub, which is why the West was deindustrialized. So the West can't detach because they need to get their stuff, and Asia can't detach because that's their export market. Plus, it seems like US, UK will be in charge of the financial system, the stablecoin system. And so Russia, Middle East provide the energy. But and so everyone's locked in together and they can't separate, and that's that multipolar world.
That's exactly what another term, global north and global south, right? These are UN terms. People just throw these around. Oh, it's the victory to the global south. Iran is a major component of the global south that will make the global south great. These are actually UN terms, guys. Do you understand what you're saying, right? And you don't even have to be if you read 1984, This is how it is. That there's like multiple blocks, right? In that particular, like 3 or 4 ultra, like multinational states, right? In that world, they don't really collaborate with each other. They fight each other all the time, right? But I mean, that's what it is. The same thing, like people are saying, "Oh, Trump is bringing manufacturing back to the U.S." Yes, he is. But who's doing the manufacturing?
AI.
The Tesla robots. Right? So how is it that helping you, right? Or like, while he's doing that, he's also applying like, 200% tariffs on China, which means like, who's going to pay for these tariffs? It's not going to be Trump. He's sitting in Mar-a-Lago and having a roaring 20s party, like, to your point. So like these people, it's like, and all this like Trump obsession, like in the lead up to like the last election, from people who are like supposedly intelligent, from people who are supposedly on our side, from people who are supposedly understand like, what's going on, right? And they say, oh, at least he's going to destroy the woke. Mate, yeah, maybe he will, but you've got much bigger problems than the woke, right? The trans agenda and all that sort of stuff, as bad as it is, that's not going to put you in a gulag, but digital ID will.
This is what
stable coins will.
Yeah, this is why in my, people come to me for the feeds where I aggregate what I think are the most interesting news, and I just stop sharing anything related to migrant attacks or trans or the culture war. That I think is the bread and circuses while they're, through the back door installing the digital control grid. It's like, no, that's the most important because I can still protect myself from the trans. I homeschool my kids, that sort of stuff. And this digital control grid they're gonna shut me off when I can't buy food or do anything. And besides the banking system aspect, is there anything else that you think would slow them down? I mean, I think not complying.
Everything starts with non-compliance, right? But here's the thing with non-compliance, and this is what people need to understand. And that is, for me, that was a very important lesson from the COVID times. With non-compliance is super important, but with non-compliance, numbers matter. Numbers matter very, very, very much, right? Without numbers, you may not comply, right? But first of all, you will not be able to you may be able to fight back to some extent, but you won't be able to fight forever, right? In Australia, they eventually ended up repealing the vaccine mandates, not because of anything we did, but because mission accomplished, right? But if they didn't, right? So, and there were only I don't know, maybe 10% who didn't take the jab, right? Right? So what happens then? As opposed to they say, okay, well, now we have a mandate for all our hospital staff to get vaccinated, right? And forget about half, a third of the hospital staff walked out, nurses and doctors. No, that's against our oath of do no harm and informed consent. That's like an oath, literally we've given an oath. So screw you, no, we're not doing that. See you later. It would have ended in less than a week. So non-compliance is very, very important, but the numbers do matter. Right? And there's ethical ways to achieve numbers, explain, educate, and there's less ethical ways to achieve numbers, which is to SIO, to basically apply to people emotional triggers. And there's no stronger emotional trigger in people than fear, right? So you scare them of something and you say, this happens if you do that, so don't, right? You don't need to understand anything else. Just if you, for example, if in 2021, right? Or in 2020, when the mandate started, we would have said instead of these vaccines haven't been tested properly. There's no informed consent, blah, blah, blah. All very true, but very, very soft messaging. But you say, if you take that, you will die. Right? You will die. Okay? Guaranteed. So that may have swayed some people who were kind of on the fence and have taken the jab only because they wanted to go on a trip to Bali, right? Or go to a football game, or go to the concert, right? So it wouldn't have stopped everyone, but maybe instead of 10% refusal, we would have had 30, 40%. With that, you can start doing some damage. So yeah, non-compliance is good, but we must have the numbers, right? And one of the things that I guess we haven't done very, very well is to bring the normies into the fold. Because, we tried, right? We tried, but I think the approach that we've taken was wrong, because we try to, like, through rational explanation, and here's the evidence, and blah blah blah, the VAERS spike 1000%, and all, and say, yeah, okay, cool, but yeah, look, I've gotta go pick up my kids, or I gotta go to the football game, right? So again, we didn't we didn't bring them across, and now with digital ID, it's even more challenging. Why? Because with a vaccine, it's a physical thing. Like someone comes and injects something in, like you see a person with a needle putting something in your arm, right? So like you don't need to be a doctor to understand what vaccination is, right? But with digital ID, if you you're not tech savvy. Oh yeah, so I need to get that, and then I'll log into that to government services, and it all be under one thing, and I don't have to carry anything in my wallet, and don't have to worry about remembering passwords. And hey, sounds pretty good. Where do I sign up?
Yeah, that is.
But that's where we are. That's where we are, and I mean, we've made a lot of mistakes on our side, and instead of course correcting quicker, quickly, very, very quickly, right? Because we have no time left. Now the new flavor of the month is the migrants, the Jews, the Muslims. Come on, guys. So this is really frustrating to me. I like Twitter. I try not to go on Twitter because that place just gives me the shits. But I mean, even Substack Notes has become very much like Twitter, unfortunately. And some of the comments that I'm getting, first of all, are you human? Like that sounds like a bot comment. Some guy with clearly like a fake name, no publication associated to him, and all these I don't even know if you're human, right? And there's a lot of bots on Substack. Like, make no mistake.
Yeah, I often mute. They make nasty comments, or they're promoting again this neo-Nazism, which to me again screams like Fed. Come on, and we need constructive criticism. I'm doing the podcast, I'm talking to people, and then people are like, "This is boring. You're stupid. What's the solution?" Like, you tell me what's the solution. Seriously,
yeah. People want to be spoon-fed. Look, I think that's a problem, and we still have that a lot on our side as well, unfortunately. And I mean, I don't profess to have all the answers. Far from it. I would even say maybe the solutions that I'm proposing are bullshit, right? And people are definitely free to say that. But at least I'm thinking, okay, this is what's happening. What can we do to actually stop that? Not just complain and bitch and moan and say, oh, this is bad. Oh, global is bad. Oh, it's the Jews. Oh, it's okay, what do we actually do to stop that? Right? If you have ideas, let's talk about ideas, right? Instead of you going to starting ad hominem attacks against me because I don't know, supposedly I'm a Zionist shield just because of my last name. You don't know anything about me, right? So every Jew is a Zionist. I mean, you know what I mean? It's all nonsensical. And then all of a sudden, the Nazis are the good guys. I had a conversation, that was quite a while ago. I had a conversation with someone also in the comment section of one of the notes that I published. And I said, hey, look, this sounds like, the Sons of Jacob, that sect in The Handmaid's Tale that took over the United States. That looks like Sons of Jacob, philosophy. And he goes, oh, they were the good guys. They they brought morals back to the country. They cleaned up all the filth. Yeah, they also mass rape women. Are you for real? And all of a sudden, the Nazis are the good guys. And even some of the Nazis, it's nonsensical. There is this series, I think it's pretty old. I think it may be from the 80s or even the 70s. The occult origins of the Third Reich, right? Where the term Aryan comes from and all that sort of stuff. I not that they would ever do that, but I would encourage any Nazi sympathizer, right? Just watch that, and what Aryan actually is. Aryan is a person in Tibet. It's a freaking brown person. Do you want to be a brown person?
No, it's. I mean, yeah, and there are people. I've that promote that stuff, and some that I know in the digital space, and it's kind of like, look, there's nothing redeeming from the Nazis or Hitler, and then I've listened to primary source material of his where he talks bad about the Slavs, my people, that we're supposed to be used for slave labor, and I'm like, how do you want me to believe in neo-Nazism if the Nazi ideology considers me an Untermensch? You're nuts, crazy. but they just find some ways to rationalize it. And I
It's
think,
interesting,
yeah.
Hitler is an interesting character. Like, I mean, the guy, like, I mean, again, he's like kind of like a Klaus Schwab. He's a spokesperson, right? I mean, right. Like, you really think he wrote Mein Kampf and all that sort of stuff? Like, it's all his ideas. I mean, it's actually interesting. Again, that series, like, the occult origin of the Third Reich. I think it's the second episode. They talk about like Hitler specifically, and they explain how he actually got involved in the Nazi Party in the first place. And he actually got involved initially. People don't even know that he was a plant for like an opposition, because basically he was put there like to spy. And because they all of a sudden realized, oh, this guy can speak quite well. And all of a sudden he kind of rose through the ranks. And it was like a double agent, right? It's craziness. And also people think, oh, Nazis, they're against socialism. That's like the antithesis. Nazis, National Socialists. Guys.
Coming back to digital ID.
Yeah.
Thoughts on running for the hills? Like, let's say if you move to the middle of nowhere, rural part of Australia or wherever country you're in, and you've got enough money, let's say, and you got a little farmhouse and you got chickens and goats and water and solar panels for electricity and bunch of batteries and all that. What then?
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's a good question. So let's talk about it. Like, that's the whole idea of like building a parallel community, which I'm not in opposition on, but I don't think it's a panacea. And to your perfect example, so you say, okay, well, let's move somewhere in the bush in Australia, right? I've got my chickens. I've got my self-sustaining farm. I can sustain myself. First of all, you say, I've got a lot of money. What do you mean by a lot of money? If you've got a lot of fiat, even if you've taken it out as cash, that's great. But the government says tomorrow, now it's CBDC. This is worthless. Right. So who's going to what are you going to do with all that, like, like pieces of paper? Maybe use it as toilet paper. That's the max that you can do. Right. So that's the issue of the money.
And that was done. Like, I saw a recent clip for like in India overnight. The big denomination notes were declared no longer, cash.
Same thing in Israel. So they removed the 200 new Israeli shekels note from, or they want to remove it from circulation because apparently it's being used for like, nefarious things, funding terrorism, whatever. Now, obviously, like, because it's the highest denomination, right? Because it's the highest denomination, that also means that like it takes like in one fell swoop, almost like 75% of all the value of cash in circulation, right? Forget that. Even a better example is Nigeria with the e-Naira. I mean, that's a country that has no digital infrastructure, no history of like, using digital stuff. People were paying for everything with cash. And then the government says, oh, look, you know what? The current cash is very easy to like, forge, right? So we need to like, replace it with new notes that have security features. We don't have these notes yet because we need to source like, the printer. So in the meantime, we're just going to do an e-Naira, which is an electronic currency. Don't worry about it. Just use that for now. And then when we print the new notes, you'll be able to like go to the bank and get that. But in the meantime, you have to download this app and like, identify yourself with this digital ID. That has happened. Like, I mean, this, and initially I think like, the adoption for digital ID in Nigeria was 0.6%. And within like, I think a couple of months, I think they reached 60%, right? Because people need to eat. Obviously there were a lot of riots. There were a lot of like other stuff, but back to your point of like the parallel community. Yeah. If you don't have to worry about money and you have like, you have a fully like self-sustainable community and you can sustain yourself, good on you. Awesome. When the initial rollout of digital ID happens, you'll probably be okay. But eventually your mere existence in that like self-sustaining community is a threat. Right? Because people may find out, okay, well, there's actually a different way of living instead of in a 15-minute city. Maybe we should go and try that, right? And also start our own farm or raise our chickens and stuff like that. So it becomes like a risk. It's like in a Brave New World, like, they ended up turning them into like an amusement park, right? Like, the savages that live outside, like, the city, right? They go and like turn them into an amusement park. In this case, that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is they're going to send the Palantir drones and finish you off because your existence is a threat. They cannot control you. If they cannot control you, you're a threat, right? So, and the whole thing of like, moving to a parallel community, that's fine. But there's things that need to happen first and need to happen in parallel. First of all, you have to stop the enemy. We cannot keep everything that we have done so far is retreat. Like we keep retreating, retreat. And now we're standing like against the cliff, right? So you cannot, like in even in sports, like forget about war, like, you cannot win a football match just by playing, or a basketball match just by playing defense all the time. You do have to attack. You have to take the initiative. Like, you have to catch the enemy off guard, right? You can't just say, okay, well, if the enemy is saying, okay, well, you go right and you defend from the right, and this is your designated area for defense. So everyone goes there and tries to defend from the right because the enemy told them to go there. So parallel community is great, but that's not the solution in itself. And that's why a lot of people are saying, oh, look, we need to, like, I think even like, Derek Bros, right? He says like, exit and build. That's fine. I'm all for that. I have no issues with that, but it takes time. And this is what we don't have at the moment. The first priority right now is to stop the enemy advancing. Not even like destroy them, but at least stop them. Like they're on the fence, right? We're pointing a gun at you. At least throw them down the fence so they have to climb again. It will take them time. At least buy the time. And then in the meantime, you can build your parallel community if you want. But the situation as we stand now, we don't have the time. Like we don't have the time to build these alternative, like, governance systems, whether they be a network state or whatever you want to call them, right? We don't have the time, right? So some cataclysmic thing has to happen first, and we'll have to unfortunately build from the ashes, right? And there's no doubt, like a lot of people are going to get hurt. Unfortunately, if we acted early, if we acted 2 years ago, if we acted 3 years ago, still a lot of people would have gotten hurt, but it'll be less. It would have been significantly less. So I mean, hopefully that answers your question. I'm not against all these like parallel movement and libertarian and anarchist and anarcho-capitalist. Whatever works for you, mate, that's all good. Anything is better than like even what I'm saying. Like, I wrote an article about like, a Confederate Constitutional Republic. That's great. But again, that's an alternative governance system that needs to happen. But before you can implement that, right, you actually need to stop the enemy advancing. Ideally, destroy them. But at the very least, stop them advance. Like, they're on the fence. Throw them down, first of all. So
Yeah, and just my
that
comment
answers your question. I don't know.
Yeah, and my comment on the exiting and building, I simply view that also as just only buying time because just as an example, I'm holding up a couple of silver Mexican Libertad ounces, and let's say I go out in the boondocks. Eventually, I'll run out of silver ounces that I've stocked up to trade. With local, I'll run out of silver. I'll run out of gold. Probably run out of bullets. Things will break down that I'll need maintenance for. That is only available in the digital ID system. Eventually, you might end up free, but I think it would eventually arc towards even a destitute type of lifestyle because you'll kind of be like Tom Hanks in that movie Castaway, right? Well,
Yep.
you'll end up. I mean, you'll still be free, but it's going to become increasingly as things break down. It'll become difficult to source stuff, and it's going to be extremely difficult. And so, and maybe to get your thoughts, let's say they do get enough buy-in for digital ID, and it gets implemented in Australia, here in Mexico. It's everywhere. It's coming in hard and fast. Russia, EU, Canada, you name it, Brazil. What initially I think it's going to be like honeymoon period. No, so things I think will seem to function normally as they're still onboarding the stragglers,
Correct.
right? And it'll be fine. But then I think we'll start to see people experiencing access denied. This application for whatever government document gets stuck. Your payment doesn't work. Just thoughts on how you see, if you extrapolate how you see that would work.
True. So look, there's no need to think or even to extrapolate. Why? Because we have a real life example of a place where that was done. And that's called India and the Aadhaar system, right? Which was rolled out initially, I think, in 2016 and has a 99% adoption rate, right? in a country that has over a billion people, 1.2 billion people, 90%, sorry, not 90, what am I saying? 99% adoption rate, right? So initially it was started to prevent, I think, social security fraud, right? So that people don't, dead people don't claim social payments and stuff like that. And it was proposed, it's going to save a lot of money. It's going to prevent fraud. It's going to do this. Now you, now you can't buy a freaking prepaid, phone without Aadhaar, right? You can't get medical care without Aadhaar. Right. And I had a guy on my podcast, Paul Conlon, who researched that deeply because he wrote a book about it. Right. It is bad. People were left destitute. People literally were left destitute because not even because they refused Aadhaar, but because their Aadhaar stopped working. Right. For whatever reason, technical malfunction or even worse, someone stole their identity. Someone stole their Aadhaar identity. Right, and they became a known person. So there's no need to extrapolate anything. We know how that's going to happen because we have an example with 1.2 billion people. Right, we don't need to extrapolate anything. Look at India. Look what happened there. 2016, between 2016 and now, this is almost a decade now, and you have your answer. So there's no need to extrapolate. Right, so. There's a lot of people even in Australia who are now thinking, okay, well, look, Australia is cooked. We're going to move to Thailand, or we're going to move to Vietnam, right? Or we're going to move Vietnam deleted 84 million, bank accounts because people didn't identify themselves in Vietnam. Sorry, guys, to remind you that, but Vietnam is a dictatorship by definition, right? So always has been. So, you can say they're a good dictatorship. People have a good life there, whatever you want to say, but they are a dictatorship. When the government says you do something, you do something. Right. Thailand, the level of their nonsense with COVID and the mandates was at least on par with Australia, if not worse. I'm not even mentioning places like Singapore, which is I refer to Singapore basically CCP China, but with Facebook. That's it. There's no difference. It's an authoritarian government. It's a family dynasty that has ruled this country since it was created. Right. Guys, this is not normal. Right. So the whole idea of escaping or trying to find workarounds, because look, even with that internet stuff that is happening in Australia, there's workarounds. You can use a VPN, you can use a fake ID, you can do this, you can do that. If you're a technical person like myself, there's a lot of things I can do very, very easily, right? But again, this is not the solution because it's like people who got a fake vaccine passport, right? To say that they've been vaccinated so that they can go to a restaurant. You know what I mean? This is not the solution. Eventually, when, ideally before that, but eventually when, your back is against the wall, you have to stand up and fight and actually stop this. You actually have to stop this, whatever it takes. And the price may be significant. No, the price will, at this point, will definitely be significant. The collateral damage will be significant. A lot of people are going to die without a shadow of a doubt. I'm sorry to say that, but it is what it is. But the alternative is a lot worse. That's what people need to understand. So this is where we are now, and we have all these people who within there were big leaders in the freedom movement and saying, oh look, this is all right, or they're just trying to say, oh look, COVID is over, move on, everything will be fine now. We won, right? We won, right? So look at some of their associations, and then you look at some of the people they're promoting, and that could be a whole show in itself. But okay, let me give you let me give you one example, right? And I'm going to mention him by name because I wrote an article about him with my colleague Ursula Edgington. So Asim Malhotra, right? So Asim Malhotra became an advisor that was published I think a few months ago. Became an advisor for an organization called Abraham House Global. That organization can easily be, a 3-hour podcast episode in itself. So I'm not going to go into that. But here are two of the things. So he's an advisor for that organization. He's been onboarded. I think he's even going to, attend they always do an event at the same time as the WF conference is happening in Davos. They do an event on the sides of the Davos conference and discuss their vision and stuff like that, right? So here are two things that Abraham House is actually involved in. So if you can let me share, right? So this is two things that Abraham House is actually affiliated with. So let me see if I can. Let me see if I can share that.
Yeah, you should be
All
able
right.
to just hit share.
Yep. All right. So this is Abraham ID, a project of Abraham House Global. Listen carefully.
8 billion people, over a billion remain invisible. No bank account, no official ID, no access to the digital economy. But what if a single digital key could unlock a world of opportunity? Introducing Abraham ID, a revolutionary platform providing secure digital identities to the world's most vulnerable. Built on cutting-edge technology, Abraham ID is more than just an ID. It's financial inclusion for the unbanked. It's healthcare access for the undocumented. It's education for those previously left behind. It's a chance for refugees to reclaim their dignity, for rural women to access microloans and start businesses, for migrant workers to securely send money home. It's a voice for the voiceless in civic participation, a shield against identity fraud and digital exploitation, a bridge to the global digital economy. Abraham ID is not just changing lives. It's transforming our global society. One identity at a time, 1 billion strong, powered by WiseKey's advanced cybersecurity, supported by a global network of partners. Join us in this historic mission. Visit abrahamit.com today. Abraham ID, one identity, a billion opportunities.
Yeah, one identity, a billion opportunities, one ID to rule them all. So like, Asim Malhotra is advising to this organization, right? I mean, WiseKey is a whole rabbit hole. I'm not even going to go into that. So we need to understand. And that was also something that was very, very painful for me to realize. Because I was quite naive. I thought like, okay, well, we know who's on our side, who's against us. We know who the enemy is. Everything is good. Okay, well, they're the good guys. Okay. And then as you start like looking and you actually start like, evaluating like rationally, hold on. Something is not right here. And I did a big piece about like, control position. It took me 3.5 months to research that. And that was a very painful project for me personally, because like you actually start like doing deep research on people like like Malone, for example, like Steve Kerr, right? And there's like irrefutable facts that come out, like with money, with receipts, like like come at you, like Malone like worked for Alliance, like pharmaceutical, which is like their boss is like what sits on the WF, like governance council. You look at this, oh, hold on, right? And these are like the people that are considered as heroes. So and then when you research that, and when you look at things like Abraham House Global and some of the other stuff that we looked at, you realize this is a plan that was years in the making. So you realize that the enemy anticipated our response. They knew that some people will wake up and realize, hold on, something is not right here. Like they knew that for certainty, and they prepared a contingency plan for that, a very elaborate, multi-layered contingency plan. You could even argue that the whole MAGA movement, QAnon, was definitely part of that, right? So then you realize, oh shit. So even like, the people that you thought were on our side, all of a sudden you realize, oh, maybe they're not really on our side. And like, not only they're working for the enemy now, they've always have worked for the enemy. They've been put there by the enemy. So, and a lot of these people now, right? Like Stu Peters, for example, there's another, she's, I think she's Danish. I don't remember, Lupis, I think. Dr. Lupis. I think her last name Lupis. But anyway, like all of a sudden they were like the beachhead for like the anti-Jew thing, the Jews rule the world, and all that sort of stuff, and like very, very aggressively towards that, and obviously and then obviously even the Zionist propaganda. One of the things that they've done is they've spawned this idea that anti-Muslim stuff, like the Muslims are like a threat to the West, London is going to be conquered, it's going to be a Muslim country. And when you look at where it comes from Zionist operations. Tommy Robinson is a Zionist operation. I don't know if people can't see. It's so. The guy was in Israel on a proper Hasbara tour. We had a lady here in Australia that was a presenter on Sky News and on Channel 9, Erin Molan. Her dad was a senator in a federal center for the Liberals, which is like the conservative party here, right? She's like literally Hasbara. Like, she went to Israel, gave two interviews to all these Israeli channels and said, oh, I'm a Christian and then I understand now, how, the Jews are feeling, guys, and people fall for all this nonsense, right? So you think that there's this video that was, I think was doing the rounds probably around 2022. Actually, let me see if I can find that. And you kind of watch it now and you laugh, right? I just want to show something.
Yeah,
Let's see if you remember that. I don't know. It was quite famous at the time. Remember that?
No, I don't remember. What is this?
All right, let's play this, right? The best on planet Earth, right? I mean, look at this.
French general.
It's called A Tribute to the Unvaccinated. Well, to probably give you an idea, right?
A tribute to the unvaccinated. Even if I were pollinated and fully vaccinated, I would admire the unvaccinated for withstanding the greatest pressure I have ever seen, even from partners, parents, children, friends, colleagues, and doctors. People who were capable of such personality, courage, and critical ability are undoubtedly the best of humanity. They are everywhere, in all ages, levels of education, states, and ideas. They are of a special kind. They are the soldiers that every army of light wants to have in its ranks. They are the parents that every child wants to have, and the children that every parent dreams of having. They are beings above the average of their societies. They are the essence of the people who have built all cultures and conquered horizons. They are there, next to you. They look normal, but they are superheroes. They did what others could not. They were the tree that withstood the hurricane of insults, discrimination, and social exclusion. And they did it because they thought they were alone, and believed that they were the only ones. Banned from their families' tables at Christmas, they never saw anything so cruel. They lost their jobs, let their careers sink, had no more money, but they didn't care. They suffered immeasurable discrimination, denunciation, betrayal, and humiliation, but they kept on going. Never before in humanity has there been such a casting. Now, we know who are the best on planet Earth. Women, men, old, young, rich, poor, of all races or religions, the unvaccinated. The chosen of the invisible ark. The only ones who managed to resist when everything collapsed. That's you. You passed an unimaginable test that many of the toughest Marines, commandos, green berets, and geniuses could not withstand. You are made of the stuff of the greatest who ever lived. Those heroes born among ordinary men who glow in the dark.
Right? So heroes born amongst ordinary men who glow in the dark, right? So we're like these, obvious, that went viral, I think in 2022, or I've seen it many, many times, but across many, many places. And you look at it now and you kind of laugh, okay? So, I mean, the greatest who ever lived, glow, those who glow amongst born amongst ordinary men who glow in the dark, right? And then you fall for literally the most retarded, all the psyops ever. Right, so we that was meant to make us feel good. Oh, this almost seems like to me. I watch this now, and it's almost like gaslighting, right? I mean, so we withstood that amazing psyop, which was. I mean, this was military grade, serious stuff. I mean, that was without a shadow of a doubt, definitely. But then we go and fall for the oldest trick in the book, like this ridiculous, like retarded divide and conquer based on whose religion or race is better or culture is better. Like, I mean, this is something that like, so I mean, I don't know. I think we need like us, first of all, like as a community, like, you know, of people who like, you know, lived through COVID and now kind of woken up and understand what's going on. We need to do a little bit of soul searching and think like, do we actually understand what's going on? Right? And if we do actually understand what's going on, maybe realize, hey, we've been played pretty bad using a pretty simple, like old school tactic. So this was no military grade stuff. I mean, you know, QAnon, like, you know, I remember when I like tried to kind of like do a little bit of research into like, you know, the origins of it and stuff like that. So I mean, you can tell straight away as soon as you look at it that this is like a copy paste of something that like, you know, the Russian Czech or the Soviet Cheka did like in the 1920s. Right? To basically lure, like basically identify the dissidents and then lure them into Soviet like territory to like lead the resistance. And then boom, like, you know, they rounded them off and shot them in the head. So, and it's literally the same thing. Obviously, it's using different tools. It's using social media. It's using the internet. It's not the same thing. But other than that, it's exactly the same.
In this case, they cognitively shot them in the head.
Correct.
Because you still have people who are QAnon believers. So they've cognitively
trust the plan. You know, Trump is fighting the globalists. So and a lot of and unfortunately, look, I mean, yeah, we can laugh, but a lot of these people are like, you know, the unvaccinated, the like those who born amongst ordinary men who glow in the dark. And this is like, guys, I mean, this is not even the whole operation itself, like, you know, the way it was obviously implemented, how it was spawned through fortune and all that. So that's military grade stuff. No argument about that. But I mean, if you saw through the COVID nonsense, you can't see through this, like something that is significantly more obvious. So, and you argue against me. And if I say this, oh no, you're a liberal, you're an anti-Trumper, you're this, you're that. Okay.
Well, something that came to mind as you were explaining stuff was, it almost feels like, because when we compare the first stage of the Operation COVID, and then the second stage, which is the algorithm ghetto, the digital ID, it's almost like they had to rough us up because it feels like the hard part is over on their part. COVID, that was like the physical assault on us, and then as you said earlier, digital ID. If you try to explain to a normie like what's so bad about it, it's kind of hard to explain because it's like, look, it's just an app. It's going to make everything easy. So I almost feel like they had to do the hard part first, COVID, for this reason. It's like the one sort of like the roughing up part, and then I don't know how to explain it, but it just seems like it's like somehow psychologically they had to do the COVID type of event first, and then digital ID to ease us into the digital ID. And a lot of O'Brien's, as you were talking about, I thought about O'Brien from 1984, who pretended to be Winston Smith's to be a dissident who turned out to be, was it the outer party type of QAnon deception. And you mentioned Singapore previously, and I want to point out a lot of the Western globalist elite. You had Graham Allison, who's known for his book on the Thucydides trap. He wrote a piece for Foreign Policy a few years back lauding Singapore. And he actually said something to the tune of, you know, American infrastructure is crumbling, but look at Singapore. It's this authoritarian technocracy, but it gets stuff done. We should be more like them. And then you had Parag Khanna lauding Singapore. So yeah, exactly that. And what, you know, I thought about when you were talking about Aadhaar in India. Here in Mexico, they want the CURP biometrico. My wife already had her identity stolen at the tax office without even us getting into biometrics. I can't imagine what it's going to be like once we give up our biometrics. For me, that's a strong point of not complying with the CURP biometrico, because if I do, my life could be turned upside down because 100%. Of identity being stolen. So it might actually, the suffering that I'll suffer for not doing it might actually be better than complying. And that also means at some point, I mean, the time we knew that it was going to come, I might not be able to leave the country, right? And so I'll have to, come to terms with that. One quick question, because I was watching you on the issue of Substack, maybe the information war in the near term. In the meantime, you started on Substack, I believe. You
Okay.
just moved to Ghost, and you're self-hosted. Any thoughts? And Substack has been very helpful for me the last year and a half. I was banned off of Patreon by, I believe NATO was involved with that. Then the Department of Homeland Security took me off of PayPal, and now I jump to Substack. But you can see from the leaders of Substack that they are very liberal globalist, and I share your sentiments that eventually Substack will become problematic. I'm more of the guerrilla mindset that we must use whatever tools we can in the meantime, but just thoughts on the information war going forward in terms of platforms and trying to get the message out.
I think your approach is actually very sound. So you use the tools that are available, and they do the job for the time that they are available and do the job. But you always keep at the back of your mind the fact that you will have to leave. So, for example, yes, I started on Substack. Looking back at it now, Substack has been very good for me as well. I started without an audience, and that allowed me to build an audience. So I cannot deny that. But knowing what I know now, I should have researched Substack a little bit better and look at who the founders is, look at who the management is. Hamish McKenzie used to be used to work for Tesla. He was the official blogger for Tesla, right? I think he wrote a biography about Elon Musk, right? So and I'm not even mentioning Andreessen Horowitz, right? Which is the main fund. I always confused between them and Arthur Andreessen, the accounting firm. But anyway, so I should have researched them a bit further, but before I joined to understand where I'm getting into. But one thing that Substack does do, and no other centralized platform offers, is they allow you to build an email list that you can take with you, and you can also export your content, right, and take it with you. And I can tell you, as someone who's exported the content and has imported it into Ghost, it imports quite well. It's not perfect, it doesn't really exactly looks the way I want it to look, but the content is there, right? So in that sense, yes, Substack is walled garden, especially things like the follow feature, right? Which is obviously they've created that because they want to build the social network aspect. That never existed until they rolled out notes, right? So it's pretty obvious what the intention behind that is. And people also need to understand, if you're on Substack, a follower doesn't even get your posts. So when you put a note, yeah, a follower may see that, but they won't when you publish something on your Substack, a follower doesn't get that. Right? It doesn't get emailed to them. It doesn't appear in their inbox on Substack because they're a follower. They're not a subscriber. Also, people who are followers, people who follow like me, follow you on Substack. They need to understand that when we publish new content, they won't see it because they're a follower. And if we disappear or have to leave for whatever reason, that's it. We lose contact. So Substack has that advantage that it Substack is probably the only type of centralized platform that is good in the sense that it allows you to move very, very easily, right? Even podcast hosts, the whole technology of podcasting that is based on RSS and allows you to redirect your RSS, allows you to import your RSS into any other hosting provider, including self-hosted, right? And that allows you to maintain your content, right? That is a good setup. For example, I have something now. So I use I take the Substack podcast feed, the RSS feed. I import it into auto import into another host, and that automatically is tied. And basically I redirect it into that other host. So basically what happens is, as long as I'm on Substack and I publish something new on Substack, as a podcast, it imports to the other host, right? And I can also publish to that host directly if I don't want it to appear on Substack. And if Substack cuts me out tomorrow or I'm forced to leave, no harm done. Everything's there, right? So people, that's how people need to think ultimately. And I mean, this is a whole different conversation, but I mean, the internet, when it was like the architecture of the internet and the way it was designed, like, back to the ARPANET days, it wasn't meant to be centralized. The whole idea is that it was meant to be resilient, right? It was meant to be a communication network for like initially the military and then also the academic establishment in the event of like, an EMP burst, right? That destroys all communications. That's like, that's what it was. It wasn't designed to be secure, but it was designed to be resilient. Right? And a big aspect of being resilient is being decentralized, being distributed. But since then, right, all these mega platforms have emerged, right, which have centralized power within their walled gardens, like, Facebook, YouTube, Substack to some extent now as well. And it's pretty obvious now. I mean, Substack had a major funding round, like, it had like a huge, like I think 500 million capital raise or something like that, right? Or 100 million, sorry. And it's obvious where they're going. Like they want to control this entire niche of newsletters, paid newsletters, where people are supported like directly by their subscribers. That's their strategy, right? This is obvious. This is why Andreessen Horowitz invested in them, because that's their modus operandi. They identify early platforms that have a very, very high likelihood and a very high chance to dominate their niche completely for years to come, and they get in on the ground floor. But they invested, for example, also in Stripe, which is the only payment processor that Substack allows to use. They invested in Facebook, they invested in Uber, they invested in Airbnb, all at the very early stages. So these are people who know what they're doing, right? And I think initially, like, when Substack first started and was for many, many years, like, in the red, they were happy to take the loss and even inject more money because they knew that the time for Substack will come. And now the time for Substack has clearly come, right? So they offer significant benefits compared to platforms like Patreon, like Buy Me a Coffee, like Coffee, right? Because of that newsletter aspect and because of the network effects that are now available through Notes, which is like a fully fledged social media platform now. So yeah, if you're on places like Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, and that's your distribution channel, primary or sole distribution channel, you may need to reevaluate your strategy, right? I mean, there's all these wave of AI powered bans that are happening on YouTube now. Like people lost their entire channels because some AI scanned the content and for some reason didn't like it, and that's it. And I mean, I've seen today just one guy describing his experience, and he tries to communicate with YouTube, and the reply is also by AI. And then he lodged an appeal, and the assessment is done by AI. Right? There's no human, there's no negotiation, right? So if you're relying on these platforms and that's how you distribute your content, and you may have a very large following on this platform, but what are you actually doing? Substack, yes. Keep that in mind, though, that things may change and things are already changing. For me, there was also the impetus of obviously the legislation that is kicking in Australia next month on December 10, and with Substack's social features through Notes, there's no zero doubt that the Australian government will designate them, which means that they will have to comply with age verification legislation, right? And either identify yourself through the My ID digital ID system, which is what Australia has, or upload a government ID or whatever, right? So, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to lose that channel. What am I going to do? So that was for me the time personally, to kind of start working in parallel. And I'm kind of shifting the focus away from Substack into my own platform where I can control it. And look, I mean, there's issues with self-hosting. I mean, I've had with my current host, I probably have to change it because all of a sudden they looked at my content and said, oh, we didn't quite realize what we were signing up for. So yeah, maybe go somewhere else.
Really?
Yep. So, and that's based, and I'm not gonna mention the name, but I mean that's let's just say it's based in Austria, right? Which is supposed to be and they promote, oh, we have some of the best free speech protection, and it's this one guy, one man band who's trying to look, I'm trying to go on my own, and I respect everyone's free speech, and I really like these ethos, and then all of a sudden,
it's O'Brien again. So I had the same experience. I was using Bluehost again, and everything that I'm doing, I built flying by the seat of my pants, not knowing what the heck I'm doing, and problems along the way. And when I saw what happened during COVID, I thought I was afraid of one of the mainstream hostings like Bluehost, which I'm not sure if it's based in New Zealand or wherever it is.
It's definitely not. It's called. It's one of the brands under the umbrella of a huge hosting company, publicly listed, fairly sure. It's called the Endurance Group. So they have simple hosts. They have a bunch of. They have I think they bought all sorts of. They have 12 different brands under their umbrella. It's all the Endurance Group. It's fairly sure it's publicly listed. So which means shareholders of Vanguard and BlackRock. So.
Yeah, and so I thought, okay, I remember Rob Bonster. He hosted Epic, EPIK. He was doing Gab and Infowars, and he's Christian, and he's doing everything's great. So I moved to Epic. I think it cost more money, and then he disappears. Epic collapses. Some of their functions stop working. And then the new owner is mysterious and starts speaking woke language and starts unhosting some of their clients. And I'm like, what is going on? And then I had to scramble and I found the new, the time that we waste as podcasters, people don't realize. I mean, I spent days, weeks in this process of time I could have otherwise been churning out more podcast content. This kind of stuff happens every few months. And so, I finally settled with, James Corbett. He uses Euro, I think it's called Euro VPS. It's on my website at the bottom, that I'm hosting with them. And so far I haven't had issues, but yeah, it's crazy. So
sooner or later, we'll have to, I understand that. Sooner or later, we'll have to self-host in the purest sense of the word, which means literally your own your own metal. Right.
But how if let's say I got my computer here and I'm self-hosting, but for me to connect to the ISP, I need digital ID, right?
Good point. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. So I was thinking as a kind of a solution in between, use one of those what's called the bulletproof hosting, which is usually used by dark web operators and stuff like that. They're usually based in Iceland in some nuclear silo or something like that. But this is bloody expensive, right? And a lot of internet service providers will just block the IP because it's used by criminals. So there's all issues with that. But ultimately, yeah. Look, we need to find a way. And look, I think Whitney Webb they started doing a physical newsletter that they literally mail to people.
I might have to make a deal with the cartels. There have been reports in past years. I've seen reports where cartels in different parts of Mexico will create bootleg ISPs. So they'll go to the Telmex, which is one of the biggest ISPs, Carlos Slim. And in some part of the country, they'll take over Telmex telecommunications pole or a number of them, and then resell. So they'll control it and I don't know, siphon it off or something, and sell or force locals to buy the internet from them. And so maybe I'll have to buy my internet from.
You laugh, but let's talk about it seriously. The dark web operators and criminals and cartels. You can obviously they're not doing good things, right, to society, or for society, but they their business is evading and resisting government. That's literally their business. This is the business model. That's the core business model. So there's important lessons that can be learned from these entities and organizations. For example, these bulletproof hosting that I mentioned, that's the operators that currently use it, right? Now, because the internet is centralized and there's a few, the internet backbone, what's called, it's very easy to take control over. So it means you can block IPs at scale, right? You can spoof your IP, but we won't get into that. But what I'm trying to say is there are actually lessons to be learned, right? Especially from people who build tools for the dark web, right? People who build tools for the dark web, and those tools have been effective for even something like Monero, for example, right? Monero, initially everyone was using Bitcoin on the dark web, right? Then when they realized, well, it's actually very easy to trace, right? And everyone switched to Monero, and has worked for them, right? So Monero by itself, it's not good or evil. It's just a tool, and that tool is effective, right? And it's proven to work for people who operate on the dark web. So maybe it's worth paying attention to. Other tools that they're using, the Tor browser, for example. I mean, there's concerns about the Tor browser because the Tor project received funding from the U.S. government.
Created by U.S. naval whatever, and a lot of the exit nodes are run by FBI. So
correct. But I mean, yeah. Look, so there's always some kind, you have to find. It won't be perfect, but you have to find something that is good enough, and it's kind of like a cat and mouse game. So as the enemy adjusts, we need to adjust, and the one advantage that we always have, right? Always have two advantages. One is the numbers, right? It's very, very, when everyone goes absolutely feral, when billions of people go absolutely feral and try to do all sorts of things to disrupt things, and it's creates this mess. It's very, very hard to control. And the other thing, and that is the important thing, and we think that unfortunately we don't have to abide by their rules. Right? We can be chaos agents. That's our mistake. We constantly try to work within their framework. Do what they say. Okay, well, if you're not happy with the government, you can petition. You can vote for a different candidate. You can go on demonstrations. This is what you're allowed to do, so do that. Right? As opposed to if we try to sabotage the financial system, right? I'm not talking about let's take arms and storm parliament. At the end of the day, that doesn't really work because you may succeed in the immediate term, but you have very little control of what's going to happen next and how the government is going to respond. And all the normies, when they see that, they're going to freak out and side with the government. Right, and will justify the government sending their goons or their drones or their AI and crush you like an ant. So that is not the right approach, but an approach that is not reliant on physical violence, but doesn't work within the framework and the rules of that they've set for us. That can work. And that is probably the only thing that can work at this stage. So, I suggested one thing. I'm not married to the idea, right? I mean, this is just something that I thought if people have other ideas that involve not physical violence, because physical violence is first of all, when it starts, it's very, very difficult to control what happens next. And all revolutions in history have proven that without a shadow of a doubt. But also, it will give justification for a very, very harsh response, right? I mean, I've seen a video, it was a couple of years ago, where basically advocated the use of the tactics or using the tactics of the color revolutions, right, to topple governments, right? So basically it's non-violent resistant, but it's using, psychological operations and positioning yourself as the victim, and you're disorganized. Supposedly everything happens organically, supposedly, but it's actually a guiding hand, right? So that is another way. But look, hopefully, if anything that comes out of this conversation, you and I, maybe people will start thinking along those lines and maybe suggest ideas that are better, right? That may work even better, that may result in less collateral damage, right? But please, guys, move away from signing petitions and demonstrating and voting for the right candidate, right? I mean, this whole election selection thing, it is nonsense. Do you think they will let you do that if it actually made a difference?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of MacGyver. So we got to become like MacGyver.
100%.
And
bingo. That's a good way to put it.
And I'm realizing now, I think often a lot of us, I don't think outside the box enough. And we really have to think very, because it's not often in my nature. Criminals tend to think more like
not
that.
In my nature as well.
And to be more wily and shrewd. I want to give a super silly example. I had to buy something online and the other day from outside of Mexico, and the government put a rule, Mexico now, some months ago, because they're going totalitarian, right? That if you buy, because of the tariffs, customs, whatever, yep. If it's in Amazon now, and I think any company you buy from online in here in Mexico, when you buy from abroad, you must put in your RFC, which is your Mexican tax ID, or your CURP, which is your like population registry number, or the package will be held at customs and you won't get it. And when I went to make the purchase, the final step was insert. But it was funny, the options. And I'm like, oh, it says put in your tax ID. It's for Mexican citizens or even foreigners. You need like your RFC or your CURP. And it said, or your foreign passport number. And I'm like, interesting. So I think technically, if you're a Mexican resident or citizen, I'm a citizen, you're supposed to put CURP. But it's like, wait a minute. I also have my foreign Croatian passport. And I don't know if the system is going to figure this out. So I put in my Croatian passport, which I think the Mexican government has no real use for them because it's a passport, from Croatia, and they want the RFC.
I'll tell you even another thing. If that's how it works, put a fake passport number. How do they know how a Croatian passport number is supposed to look like? Put the same length of characters, right? But make up something. How are they going to check that? When the digital ID is in place and when it's global, oh yeah, they can check that, no problem. But at this point, none. Put a fake number. I'm a foreigner, whatever, and this is my.
But
even Croatian? Why even Croatian? Say you're Algerian and put some. You know what I mean?
But so this is an experiment now. So I mean, even if with my true Croatian passport number.
Oh, so you don't know? You haven't received the package yet?
It said it's been sent, but even with my Croatian passport number, that really I think has no value for the Mexican government. But I'm wondering if somehow because it's customs, and so when you come in, if they have access, if their database is unified enough to link the foreigner's passport who is in Mexico, too. So I might get a notice that says, "Oh, there's been a mistake," so then I have to give them my CURP. So we'll see. But I think we have to at least try with this type of.
It's an interesting experiment. It's an interesting experiment because I would imagine it's actually really interesting to see, like, if you will actually get the passport. You gave a real number, and you gave like the actual number of your Croatian passport. So in all likelihood, you probably will get your package. But if you use the fake one, it'll be interesting to see how it works because in order for them to check that, customs needs to be linked to Mexican immigration. Because I think when you cross the border into Mexico as to any other country and you arrive with your Croatian passport and you present the passport.
But I enter as a Mexican, so the Croatian passport wouldn't be in the system.
No. But what I'm saying is, and I don't know, maybe people know, but when you enter a country, right, as a foreigner, like you're not a citizen of that country, right, and you enter with your passport, right, and there's that machine readable at the bottom that they read, or maybe the chip. They need to see, okay, is that a real passport? Like, does that actually exist? Was that issued by the government, right? I'm assuming, again, I don't know, but I'm assuming that there has to be some kind of international linkage because otherwise, how would they verify that, Hervo Mojek with that passport number has actually been like issued by the Croatian government?
It's possible they only verify that the passport is genuine. So. By that
possible, yeah. I honestly don't. It's an interesting question because you can create like a genuine passport. Like it's if you've got access to the manufacturing thing, like and you can do that. It's a bit more difficult now with an e-passport because of the chip, but you can still do it. But obviously, it will be with a number that doesn't exist in the real system. So, do they check that or not? I don't know, but that's a good question. But that's worth testing. In all likelihood, you will probably get it unless they detect. Oh, actually, no. You know what? Yeah, you've put a Croatian passport, but you're actually also a Mexican citizen. So we need to know your Mexican details. But how would they be able to do that? They can't based on. I'm just thinking out loud here, but could be based on your address, right, and your full name. Oh, we actually have a Mexican citizen by this name living at this address.
Yeah, I didn't think of that.
Oh, why did you put a Croatian passport there?
So I'll play dumb. I can play dumb, like it's a foreign passport. I don't know. No hablo español.
Yeah, exactly. But, no English Fly Monday. Yeah, no. That's you can do that. It's actually be interesting to see if you're gonna get. And look, there is an international law. It's an international law, fairly sure, that says that if you're a citizen of if you have multiple passports, but you're a citizen of the country that you're entering, you must enter with the passport of that country.
Oh yeah,
Right?
we do that. I do that.
Yeah. So you have 3 passports. When you go to Mexico, you must enter with your Mexican passport. It will be illegal for you to use any of the other 2, right? But again, but if you tried, how would they pick up that?
But even this is just short-term solution, because as you said, 100%. Once the digital ID comes in, 100%. None of this is.
But this is the kind of thinking that we need to have. So what you're saying, what you said is brilliant. Be like a MacGyver, right? How we come up with a solution. I think Orbit, he did an episode Monkey Wrenching the New World Order. So all these little hacks that we can do. It's not an ultimate solution, because those hacks will not be available forever. But while they're available and they're done at scale by millions of people all over the world, they can actually make a difference and slow things down. So absolutely. So if you just do that, or if I just do that, and just the 2 of us do that, not going to make a difference. But if all of a sudden millions of people start doing that, right, and put fake passports, fake foreign passports in their thing, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know what are the potential legal implications for that. I don't know. Police may show up at your door. I don't know.
I highly doubt that. But
well, that's awesome. And it's good. It's good now. Based on what you're describing, and I don't know. I visited Mexico a couple of years ago. It was a while ago, more than a decade ago. It didn't seem to me like a very country that has has its shit together, in the sense that everything that's happening, they're gonna monitor you, and
but that stuff is coming in. The algorithm ghetto is coming in fast and hard to Mexico. Yeah.
So so these things, yeah, they can work as a delay tactic. So it's kind of saying the enemy is advancing on a path, and you booby trap. You said booby traps. Yeah, it will stop them. It will probably cause them some casualties, right? Metaphorical casualties, but they'll keep advancing eventually, right? Yeah. So eventually you'll have to face them. It's like any guerrilla warfare. Ultimately, right? You actually have to attack the enemy, right? The partisans, during the Second World War, they hid in the forest, and they would kill the old German patrol, but then eventually they actually also attack.
Eventually, I have right behind me. It's their little red booklet. Is he was a partisan. My grandfather apparently was forced to become a partisan, and the Nazis got him and put him in for 6 months a concentration camp. Yeah, wow. And he survived just barely, but eventually we're going to have to face the music, aren't we, Michael? So
that's the message, and that's the message. And I guess the addition to that, we're going to have to face the music. And it's better sooner, in our interest. It is in our interest to face the music sooner rather than later. Because the longer we wait, the pain and the damage and the suffering will be significantly worse. If we were having this conversation 2 years ago in late 2023, instead of late 2025, I would have said, look, the collateral damage there would be collateral damage, but look, it's not bad. Right? I don't think it will result in civilizational collapse and there'll be freaking anarchy and stuff like that. Now I'm not so sure. But what is the alternative? A Mad Max world or an algorithm ghetto? I don't know. Only people can people can answer that for themselves.
Well, if you ask me today, again, our opinions change, but today my flavor is I'd prefer the Mad Max world to the algorithm ghetto.
Same here.
I don't know.
Same here. At least take your chances, and at least you. I think in a Mad Max world, yeah, as rough and terrible as it is, at least who's the threat. Where's the threat? You know what they're gonna do? Okay, well, they're gonna try and storm your house. They might take your food, or try and kill your kids or whatever. Right? Yeah, you understand. It's not a more manageable threat, but it's a threat that you understand. They're not gonna send the Palantir drones to your house and kill you with AI guided missiles, right? It's going to be a little bit, it's going to be more like old school in that sense.
I was listening to Frank Turner, the I think English rock and roller, and his song "Sons of Liberty," and one of the lines was about the West. What was it? What's that gun? The Westchester rifle or something? That's the law of the land, like the Wild West days. So, but back then you knew who were the sheriff. Everyone was armed. Don't mess with those guys at the end of the bar. Mind your business. And so, anyways, any final thoughts, Michael? Any final thoughts, and letting us know where to find you?
Yeah, look, I mean, the one final thought that I just really want to say is please, guys, please, people, enough with the nonsense. All right, please. I mean, we've given it way too much energy. All these Jews, immigrants, brown, white. Enough. We need to focus, please. This is too serious, and we are very, very late in the game, right? And we need to get our shit together. That would be my message, and I urge people to please, get their shit together, and also stop being insane. Stop working, trying to do things that haven't worked and thinking that they're gonna work. This is literally the definition of insanity. Those are, I guess, my two takeaways from our conversation. And yeah, look, I mean, as far as finding me, so I am still on Substack, actionabletruth.substack.com. But I am shifting away from that. And the two platforms that I have, I mean, the last post that I have in my Substack explains it in more detail, but it's my website. So it's actionabletruth.media. Then I also have a private community on community.actionabletruth.media. So this has a social media aspect that I'm fully in control of. It also has a merch store. So that's from the merch store. Just kind of another thing, I realized that I got feedback that some people want to have something physical as a sign of their support and stuff like that. And some people just like to buy stuff. So I just wanted to offer more options. I understand, again, speaking about all this e-commerce stuff, and understanding that I mean, this may be shut down, right? And so I mean, I have some, and I've discussed that in my post, some ways to do an offline donation, kind of bank transfer, crypto, or whatever. It's not really offline, but it's, I guess, outside the primary payment processes. And yeah, that's basically where you can find me. I mean, what happens after December 10, I really don't know. It kind of depends on what happens to Substack, whether it gets designated, which it almost certainly will, and then whether they're going to comply or face fines, $50 million or whatever. And at some point, I'm probably going to get an email from Substack saying, oh, well, we need your government issued ID. And then I'll say, okay, well, screw you. And that will be the end. But until then, I'll still be there. But always, the best thing is always go to my website, sign up directly there. Then I have your email and we can communicate. Go to my private community, sign up there. There's a free tier and two paid tiers. And yeah, again, then I have your email, and whatever happens, even if I have to switch platforms, what I'm using as far as the private community, I have your email. So I can stay in contact. And that's really it. I encourage other people who do this kind of work that we're doing to think about your own setup and how cancellation proof are you? That's what I would say.
All right, I had to correct myself. Winchester rifle was what I meant. And yeah, your links are in the description so people can sign up to your list, Substack, and website. And may the odds be ever in your favor, Michael.
Likewise, boy. Yeah, look, good chatting. And look, I think as I guess to finish on a positive note, we can still turn things around. Yes, there will be damage, but we can turn things around, but only if we get our shit together now. If we continue another 6 months, another 12 months with this nonsense, right? We are in deep trouble, and there is a fate worse than that. So please get your shit together, people.
I'll see you on the landing grounds.
Likewise.